You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Friday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. You know what's going on in the world of vol? Well, let's find out together, shall we? Because it is time for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the TAG, OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the network upon which all of you are binging and mainlining these days. You already downloaded the show. You already drove up our bandwidth bills. Might as well throw a star or a like or a rating or a comment. Whatever your platform lets you do, throw it our way. It does help new folks continue to discover the content. And of course, you want more content in your lives. You don't want your broadcast week to end with Volatility Views. You want to come back for a little bit of options oddities fun. You want to get great pro Q&As like the one we had earlier this week with our buddy, the Last Emperor over there at Fidelity, and a whole bunch more. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro, the place to go. Or for you cool kids who like secret entrances, /secret club. But again, that's just for you, not for the person sitting next to you. Let's go see who's sitting next to us, virtually at least, on the old Volatility Views show today. First, let's go out to the Southern Volatility Mecca known as Austin, where we are joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to ye old volatility program, sir.
Good to be here. Jay Powell has spoken, and the markets have reacted.
Yeah, apparently it's not the death knell to life that everyone was expecting, but we shall see. The day is young, the session is young, and joining us in the old hot seat this week, our old pal, Mr. Russell RHOADS, a.k.a. the once future and now present Dr. VIX. I can say present because he does have the paper. Check his Twitter if you don't believe him, listeners. Now holding court over there at the KELLEY School of Business and the proud owner of a brand new Bloomberg terminal, Mr. RHOADS, welcome back to the show. Let's see what work we can put to that Bloomberg terminal this week, shall we?
We gotta make it worthwhile. Gotta make sure that I can justify the cost within the RHOADS household and the family budget.
That's our entire mission on the network now, is to amortize Russell's Bloomberg. So here we go, listeners.
Exactly.
It is time for the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we break down everything going on in the world of vol this week and indeed today. And as the meatball alluded to, everyone was waiting all week, really, to see what good old Mr. Powell would throw our way again at the Jackson Hole Conference. So we have seen volume a little bit muted this week heading into this. And even today, coming into the session, markets were again kind of struggling to figure out their footing. It's another whipsaw-y week and another whipsaw-y day, listeners, because earlier in the session, we had the S&P heading lower. Most of the markets were heading lower. We got down, looks like not quite 43.5 in the S&P, but pretty darn close, like 58 or so. And now it looks like rebounding a bit as people are digesting the news out of Jackson Hole, rallying us back to, we were at 4,400 briefly before they crushed it down to around 43.5. Now back to within spitting distance of 4,400 again, about 10 handles away. All that means coming into start of the show, S&P is now up about 1/3%, NASDAQ up about 1/4%, Dow closing in on 0.5%, not quite there, about 0.45% or so. So again, a lot of digesting and analyzing and reading between the lines on these words, and another whipsaw-y type of day, which we've come to expect now for the last couple of months. We're just whipping all over the place to the point where VIX itself, VIX usually likes a good whipsaw-y day. They like it. They gets a lot of volume out of it, gets a lot of action out there in the options. Last few sessions, and indeed today, not so much. It seems like, we've been there and done that. We've seen a few whipsaws. What else you got for us? Of course, I should also say we are recording this in the dog days of summer. This is really one of the two seasonally light periods of the year that you really can expect for VIX. So we're kind of seeing probably the numbers that we should be seeing right now for August, and these more active weeks, probably a bit of an aberration. But we'll get to all of that, listeners. Right now, VIX cash, a little bit north of the 16 handle when we kicked off the show, about 16.15. That puts it down a little over a point, about 1 1/3 points from where it was this time last week. VVIX coming crashing back to earth. It was hanging out in triple digits for the better part of the week. A lot of that with the baked-in anticipation for good old Powell out there today. Most of that coming off now is at about an 89 when we kicked off the show, down 13 points from where it was this time last week. And VOLQ, NASDAQ vol, still managing to hold relatively steady, all things considered. Is at about a 20 even when we kicked off the show, down about 2/3 of a point out there. So a lot to unpack. We will start with our guest, Mr. Rhodes. Sir, what is catching your eye out there in yet another whipsaw-y day and week, sir?
Well, it's whipsaw in the equity markets, and you noticed, you pointed out that periodically VIX is not necessarily biting on the moves. And what I mean by that is, we're not going lower in sync with the S&P 500 going higher, and vice versa, which tends to keep me short right now for one, especially when we're not making lower a lower VIX. We haven't made a new VIX low close for 2023 since like late June. Even when we were making newer highs in the S&P 500. And I know we've turned a bit to the downside, but the way VIX has been reacting, I feel like we're probably just going to grind lower in stocks for a while. And it's like an expected grind lower. I think we're all learning more and more that VIX is not just about reactions. It's also about some expectations. 2022, a lot of people did not expect an awful lot for the equity markets. The equity markets misbehaved in a bad way. And VIX topped out at 33, which had everybody scratching their heads and going, well, it's supposed to go to 40 when we have situations like this. Well, yeah, it's supposed to go to 40, except, think of it this way. If I happen to have a birthday coming up and I happen to see that there is a surprise party for me, the level of surprise that I'm going to be able to transmit is going to not be the level of surprise that you would get if I walked into my birthday party and didn't know it was coming. So it's kind of the same thing with VIX. You get more of a reaction from unexpected type things. You have the whole world talking about how overvalued the equity market is, how we need a rest, all these other kind of things. You might have people that have set up for that. And if they've set up for that, they're not reacting and pushing VIX higher when we have a couple of bad days in the equity markets.
Indeed. Now we turn our attention to the Southern Volatility Mecca, to which I believe Mr. Rhodes will be traveling later today. So everyone's heading to Austin. I guess I think I have to book my ticket coming up soon for RMC down that neck of the woods in a couple of months. So all roads lead to Austin. Mr. Meatball, sir, was catching your eye out there in the Southern Volatility Mecca today.
Yeah, it's an interesting day. As Powell was talking, markets tried to blow higher. We were up 40 at one point, then we were down 20, and here we are basically where we were before Powell started talking. But with that, you are getting kind of a little bit of a throttling in the VIX, but it's still 16, and the ratio between realized and implied, S&P realized volatility. So how much the S&P is actually moving is, got a nice little bump on Thursday, but it's still only, on a 20-day rolling basis, about 12 and about 10.5 on a 10-day roll on a 30-day. So there's not, for how expensive vol is, we're not seeing the market movements outside of maybe yesterday. It's a little weird. And, you got to wonder whether there's some sort of macro event that maybe we don't see heading our way. I don't know, but it is a little strange, the behavior of volatility relative to what the market is actually doing.
A lot of strangeness lurking out there in our markets. Sometimes it's exhibited in the volatility surface, listeners. Let's go out there and see if we can uncover some secrets, shall we? Coming into the start of the show, the vol surface, especially that front portion, not surprisingly, taking a bit of a break. It was down about exactly a point in the set future when we kicked off the show. Remember, August has rolled off the board last week, listeners. October future also coming in a little over half a point, about 0.6 of a point. If we look out farther down, we've been talking for a while about that blip, that little bit of a bump they're pricing into vol end of Q1, beginning of Q2 of next year. And that is still the case. We're not quite north of a 21. Obviously, the curve has shifted down a little bit since last week, but we're threatening. You go out to April now, you're nearly at 21, about a 20.85 when we kicked off the show. So they still are pricing in some juice, perhaps, as the Meatball was alluding to, perhaps some unknown unknowns that are lurking out there in the volatility surface and indeed in these markets. Mr. Once and future Dr. VIX, sir, what are your thoughts on what we're seeing out there in the volatility surface this week?
Whoops, got to hit that mute button. It's looking fairly normal, and it actually gives me, because even with the S&P 500 not having the best of August, you've got a pretty normal looking term structure, and especially with September at a pretty nice premium relative to spot, just makes me think that we are still braced for a bit more downside. One of the things, if we do get a couple of nasty days in the S&P 500, I'd be looking to stop being short if the curve inverts, but we are nowhere close to that. Of course, VIX isn't really at relatively elevated levels compared to where we've been, as of late. It's, maybe if it ran up to 20 real quickly, we would suddenly be inverted without really being in a spike. And that might be an indication that we've that the downside in the S&P is behind us. But right now, I've been vocally short with the S&P 500 for a few weeks now, and there's nothing I'm seeing out of VIX that's making me change my mind.
You have been conspiring single-handedly to talk this market down, sir.
Yeah, I'm talking my book. Everybody else does it. It's my time.
Yeah,
now.
Exactly. Everyone else does it. They go on CNBC all day long and just talk up their books. You might as well do it here as well. We'll be nice. We'll give you that little bit of runway. But at least you admitted it up front. You said, hey, I'm short this market. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. Obviously, a little bit of evolution out there in the surface. Front portion getting crushed, the whole curve shifting down, but still that little bit of a kink, a little bit of a bid longer term, as if they're pricing in what I believe your cohort, the Rock Lobster, referred to a couple of weeks ago as that dark lord of the Sith that is lurking in the market but has yet to reveal himself. Mr. Meatball, what say you, sir?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, you've got a pretty nice contango. You're seeing. I know we're going to talk vol futures here, vol futures and vol ETPs in a little bit, but you definitely have a little bit of pressure on the curve today. It's really never gotten close, even at the highs yesterday. It never got close into backwardation, even at the highs today. But I would comment, they're buying it and selling it very quickly. The realized volatility on vol futures when we get some of these moves is pretty impressive. They'll come and scoop them up pretty quickly to hedge themselves. So there's some spiciness in there. And yeah, that back end of the curve, I don't know what it is, but it looks like a short.
It is interesting. We've been eyeballing it for a while, and it persists out there, listeners. So we will continue to keep an eye on it. It's not quite as aberrant as we were talking, a few years ago with the election, and then pricing in all that juice in the futures in 2020. Soon after the beginning of the year in 2020, other things took our eyes away from the blip in the October timeframe. I wonder what it could have been. But yes, we're not quite there yet with this, but it is something to keep an eye on longer term in the VIX futures. Let's get out to the land of VIX options. What brought you all to the dance here today, listeners? And you know what? VIX was kind of sleepy. Was kind of hanging out. I kind of alluded to at the top of the show. We were well shy of 200,000 contracts. It was like probably not much more than $1.50, $1.60 on the tape right before we started the show. Seems like VIX is starting to stir to life a little bit right now. Makes some sense. Folks waiting for Powell. Now they're starting to digest it. The news is coming out. They're starting to put their trades on. So we're seeing a little bit more paper start to sprinkle in. Right now, there's about 236,000 contracts on the tape. So roughly 80-odd thousand have gone up since we started the show. So a little bit more paper. Again, we're not crushing a million contracts like you might expect on a typical Fed day. This is obviously not a Fed day, but it's a Powell day, so it has some Fed elements to it. And yet only 236,000, so not even 250,000 contracts on the tape right now. The ADV also continuing to come down, and you hear me break down the week's worth of paper. You'll see why, listeners. Down to 729, down 55,000 contracts from last week. Again, it's August 25th. We should be well below that. The fact that we're even within spitting distance of 750 ADV in the VIX right now is kind of surprising. So we're kind of probably just catching up to where we should be seasonally in VIX land right now. But it has been interesting to watch the paper out there. Break down a quick top 10 while we get ready for everyone's favorite theme music. So nice. We'll have to hear it twice. Right now, it costs you 213,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX. That's pretty steep. Usually you see it around $1.60, maybe $1.80 if things are getting frothy out there. So 213 to break into the top 10. That shows that VIX is kind of dense from a OI perspective, at least. About 12.3 million contracts open. We've seen more, obviously. We've seen well north of 14, 15 million. But 213, nonetheless, nothing to sneeze at. That gets you to the SEP 25s. Number 9, 219. That gets you to the October 20s. So already we're all over the place. By the way, 7-3 calls over puts right now, listeners. So that is starting to mitigate a little bit this call monopoly, this call dominance we've had on the top 10 for months now. The dam is finally starting to show some cracks. We saw one put sneak in there. Last week it was 2. Now we are up to 3. So some puts starting to actually accumulate some OI, listeners. Number 8, 226,000 of the SEP 35s. Number 7, our first of 3 puts, 232,000 of the SEP 17 puts. Number 6, 237,000 of the SEP 13 puts. So back-to-back once again with those 2 puts. Number 5, 240,000 of the SEP 23s. Number 4, 241,000 of the SEP 24s. Number 5, here we go. Here's some of the fun paper. Seems like it's been kicked to the curb. We got to get some more of it in there. Like my old friend, a little bit north of 250,000, 255,000 of the NOVE 47 halves. I don't know why that month and that strike just attracts my eye so much, but it does. I like it every week. Still here. Number 3 spot. Number 2, 264,000 of the SEP 60s. You knew those weren't going anywhere. And the number 1 big dog out there this week, listeners, we have a put dominating the leaderboard this week. 379,000 of the September 15 puts. Interesting stuff out there. So for all of you out there who've been waiting for the puts to assert themselves, perhaps now is your time to shine, listeners. But you know what? We know whose time it really is to shine right now, listeners. I think it's really all of our times to shine because we all get to bask in the glow of the best theme song in the business. Yes, listeners, it is time for Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
Oh, yeah, we got to hear it again. Here we go.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
What we need to add to the end of that is Andrew laughing.
Yes, or me. I'm always laughing after it.
Well,
yes.
but he always is like, I mean, he has a very unique laugh.
You need to just put that on your phone.
He loves it.
And whenever
it still makes him burst out laughing. So we just got to add that to the end.
Whenever you enter a room now, Russell, you need to have that on your phone. And when you're heading into, let's say, a big meeting or a big presentation or a big class, you just play that, hold it out in front of you and play it as you walk into the room and just let the waves of appreciation wash over you, sir.
Actually, my theme song when I walk into a room is "It's Raining Men."
What are you? It's Homer Simpson. Is that what you do?
Yeah.
Not no more. It ain't.
I've always said if I became a Major League Baseball player, that was going to be my walk-up music because it would rattle the pitchers so much.
Well, there you go. You could do a little "It's Raining Men." You have a little melody, then you cut it in with a little bit of Russell's Weekly Run. And then they won't know what to think. You'll have to completely flummox them, and then you'll be all set to give your speech or whatever it is.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. Monday, there was absolutely nothing to talk about. Tuesday, somebody bought a 18-19 call spread that expired the next day. They paid 16 cents for the 18 strike calls and sold the 19 strike calls for 7 cents. Cost them 9 cents. I went back. I think this is a covering to, getting out of the bearish call spread just to make sure we didn't get any surprises at settlement the next morning. It's just open interest wise and volume wise. It appears to me that was somebody it was worth 9 cents to not worry about the settlement the next day. I also came across a rolling trade, and it looks like there was a small profit on the on the cover part of this. Somebody bought 200 of the August 23rd 15 calls for $1.89 and sold 200 of the August 30th 15 calls for $2.27. I'm pretty certain that they sold those August 23rd calls for $2.02. So there was a small profit on that. I think they were just rolling a trade and using this to remain short VIX. I'm kind of hoping that they own, 20 futures as well, that this is more of a combined trade or something like that, and that they're not just naked selling a couple hundred calls, because that is a way to get to the poorhouse pretty quickly when, I actually had a student panic yesterday and say, Putin just killed that guy. I'm long stock. Should I sell my future? I'm like, no, nobody cares. So it'll be another outlier that causes trouble for people that might be long stocks or short VIX. Also, finally, they sold. This was an interesting trade. Maybe it will dictate my crystal ball, because I'm not really rooting for this trade. Somebody bought 194 of the August 30th 14 puts for 3 cents. Maybe that's a great flyer. We shall absolutely see. But that would have taken Powell getting up, and his speech would be Kevin Bacon at the end of Animal House. All is well. Don't panic, etc. So I don't see us getting down to 14, and I didn't see it combined with anything else either. Let's see. Wednesday, buyer of about 2,500 of the August 30th 16 puts for 43 cents. VIX was at 16.19 at the time. That's kind of a good trade if you think volatility is going to work its way lower. And then there were a few of these over the course of Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. Somebody bought just over 1,000 of the August 30th 32 calls for a nickel, again by themselves. On Thursday, somebody bought about 5,000 of the August 30th 18 calls. That previous trade was the August 30th as well, but this was the August 30th 18 calls for 48 cents. And today we got somebody that bought a little over 600 of the September 6th 23 calls, and they did this at 5 a.m. Little reminder that you can trade VIX in your jammies if you choose to do so. They paid 10 cents for those. VIX was at 16.99 at the time, and there was also a in this trade makes me scared. But somebody sold 400 of the September 6th, 15 calls for $2.03 this morning when VIX was around 1605. I'm really hoping, and I saw a handful of shorter dated VIX call sales like that. I really, really do hope that that's maybe combined with a long position in the standard futures or something like that, because I don't really remember seeing this many what appear to be naked call sales in the weeklies and VIX in some time.
I mean, the margin you're tying,
or if ever.
Yeah, the margin you're tying up to do that, is it even worth it if you're just doing them naked? I mean, what are you doing?
You've got to assume the futures that this combined with some sort of futures position.
What do you
just got to?
What are you doing out there? Also, speaking of futures, I love the fact that your students are out there just slinging the futures, the E-mini out there. You're just luring all your students to the dark side one by one, sir. Well done.
They're trading the micros.
Oh, the micros, even better.
Yeah, it's baby steps for my baby students.
I love it. Putin just killed that guy. Should I sell my stuff?
No, really. I wish
great.
I could find the email. It's hilarious.
As someone who was out there in the SPX, every time Yeltsin was supposedly assassinated or murdered, or this time he really died, and I know it for sure because my brother-in-law is on the desk in New York and his cousin is in Russia, and 50 times that must have happened while we were out there. And yeah, the markets didn't really fall out of bed too much for those either. So Putin assassinating this dude, this obviously not the brightest bulb in the world.
Nobody really cares.
You march on Putin and then you just stop. What are you doing? Have you not read a history book? But I digress. Once you go big or go home at that point. Once you launch the coup, you got to go all in. Otherwise, you're going out a window or you're getting radioactive poisons, or in this case, they were more subtle. They just blew up his helicopter, or plane, I think it was. But I digress. Let's get out to the paper. Let's see if there's any assassination-related paper going up today. Spoiler alert, the answer is no. Even though there is a little bit more paper on the tape out there today. Like we said, 236,000 contracts on the tape right now, so getting a little bit more respectable. We barely cleared that yesterday, so that'll show you how light the latter portion of the week has been. Today, the big dog, such as it is, 25,000. This must be the new trade that just came in. 25,000 of the SEP 30s, because I don't think these were on the board out there before we started the show, hence the very anemic paper out there. Let me see if I can pull these up really quickly. There we go. Yeah, SEP 30s went up 17,000 times for 26 cents. And looks like, it was a spread. So maybe they're rolling to the OC 22s for $1.41. So it was part of a spread out there. They had a total of 25,000 of the SEP 30s and then 24,000 of the DEES 35s to number 2. 24,000 as well of the DEES 40s for number 3, so probably a bit of a vertical. DEES 35-40 vertical. That's an interesting one as well. Were they buying that bad boy to open? A lot to unpack. Let me see if I can pull this one. That's obviously another time of year, listeners, when we're not exactly known for our seasonally robust vol. So read into that what you will. Interesting. Yeah, it looks like they were maybe buying that vertical. Number 4, 20,000 of the OC 22s, and rounding out the top 5 today on a pretty light day, 10,000 of the SEP 24. So we're kind of all over the place today. A DEES paper. Interesting. Yesterday, extremely light. 265 was our total for the day. Usually we're past that by this point in the show already. 34,000 was the big dog yesterday. That was a SEP 15 put, so our old friend, the number 1 spot in our top 10 right now, listeners. And then we fall off a cliff after that. 11,000 for number 2 of the SEP 25s. Number 3, 11,000 as well of the SEP 18s. Number 4, 10,000 of the SEP 70s, 7 O's. I haven't seen one of those in a little bit. That's fun. And then number 5, 10,000 exactly of the SEP 20 puts. What if that was a risk reversal and they were financing the 70 calls with the SEP 20 puts? That'd be a good one. Wednesday, 393,000, so a little bit more respectable. But again, it is August, listeners. 44,000 was the big dog on Wednesday of the SEP 40s, followed by number 2, 26,000 of the SEP 30s. Number 3, 25,000 of the SEP 16 puts. Number 4, 17,000 of the October 19 calls, and bringing up the rear on Wednesday, 16, almost 17,000 of the October 25. So maybe a little bit of vertical action there as well. Tuesday, sad as it is to say, the big dog of the week, the most active day of the week, only 521,000 contracts on the tape. But again, that's a banger day when you're looking at the dog days of August. The big dog on Tuesday, 53,000 of the OC 19s, followed by 37,000 for number 2 of the NOV 19s. Number 3, 29,000 of the October 18 puts. Number 4, 28,000 of the Nove 39. So interesting Nove upside going up these days. And rounding out the top 5 on Tuesday, 24,000 of the October 18 calls. On Monday, I guess you can call it a fair day. Not blowing the doors off, not quite either. 404,000 contracts on the tape on Monday. The big dog on Monday, 55,000 of the SEP 15 puts. So once again, that strike proving to be attractive to folks. Number 2, 45,000 of the Feb doubles, the Feb 55s. Number 3, 15,000 of the Feb 32s. Is there a Feb 1x3 on the tape on Monday? I'll have to go dig into that. The Feb 32, 55, 1x3. Are we back, listeners? Is it 1x3 season again? Are we going all the way out to Feb with our 1x3s? Huh. I don't know how much I like that. I'll have to look into that. Listen, followed by number 4, 15,000 of the Jan 45. So that could be related paper there as well. And then rounding out the top 5, 14,000 of the SEP 16 puts. Mr. Meatball, what caught your eye out there in this week's paper as I go to try to investigate what was going up on Monday there, sir?
Yeah, there was a lot. Today there's a decent amount of paper. They're buying calls. In September and October, we've seen a lot of that action in the VIX market. Mostly they're doing like a call roll, buying the OCT 22s to sell the SEP 30s. There's a DEES 35 40 call spread going up today. 1 second here, and I'll get more. Yesterday, we had a big put buyer, the DEES 15 puts. And yet, I know you love these SEP OCT 45 calls. Those were busy. But yeah, it has been a lot of calls. There is some put buying in September and October. I actually, Mark, you'll like this. I bought a lot of puts in VIX.
Is that you on the SEP 15 strike? Is that you?
Pretty close. I am piling into the September 13.5 puts.
Oh, we're back to these. I love it. What?
They're 4 cents. And I love the risk reward there. I mean, you get like a nice little rally, and the market tanks. Your 4 cent bid could turn into 8, 9. I mean, you could turn 100% like that.
That's a 3-banger if it's anything, sir, right there at the SEP.
But yeah, no, the SEP 15s look really cheap too. They're 25 cents. We were just 12 less than a month ago.
I know, we were just
right?
12.
And so, we've got about close to a month on these. There's plenty of time for us to even get a blow off the top and then vol to kind of collapse. So that I thought you'd like those, and maybe you'd want off there, Longo.
I do like, I like my cheapy downside swing.
I know you do.
And now that you said that, you whisper that into fruition. I know a bunch of our pro members are going to be gobbling those bad boys up out there as well. They can't resist a little bit of VIX down. Everyone usually swings to the upside fences. We like swinging for our 3X or I think what were those other ones we did? They were ridiculous. They were like 7 or 10X.
Oh, those were amazing. Those were the June 16s, I want to say?
June 15 or 16, one of those two, yeah.
Yeah, and we made an absolute killing on those. Those were absolutely amazing.
Those are still percentage-wise.
They went to like $2.
Yeah, they were ridiculous. They were, there you go, listeners. 13.5 puts in September. Can we get there? Mr. Rhodes, you were just slamming the 14 put buyer. You didn't think we were going to get there. Of course, those were.
No, I didn't. I was kind of slamming that one because it only had a week.
Yeah, it had a week to go. Yeah.
But what I was going to say about buying those cheap options. When I was at the Options Institute, we would talk about that, and we would show, one of the things is you hear somebody talk about the 15.5 strike. You don't necessarily have to get below there for those options to make money, and that's something a lot of people don't take into consideration. You tend to look at what you're hoping will happen in the underlying market, and you're looking at the price relative to the strike price. And what you really need to look at is, where will the premium of the option be? Even if the option's not in the money, you can make money off of trades like that. And I don't think that if VIX starts grinding lower, that the 14 put is going to suddenly go 20 cent bid when there's 3 days left. But on trains, something that's a little bit farther out, heck yeah, that can work out. And again, that can work out without you even, was it 15.5? You don't even have to get below 15.5 for that trade to work.
And while you were talking, Mr. Meatball, I did pull up the Monday paper. It looks like that spread was a ratio vertical. It was the Feb 32 paper selling those for $1.62 and buying the doubles for 69 cents. Looks like it went up initially roughly 1 by 2. It was 14,500 by 34,200. Then they obviously did more of the doubles to kind of turn it into a 1 by 3. Feb 1 by 3. Let's see. Yeah, selling 1. Yeah, buying 3. Yeah. You like that? Going all the way out to Feb with a ratio vertical, Mr. Meatball or Mr. Rhodes?
No.
Yeah, I don't love it either. I'm trying to figure out why.
I'm sitting here looking at the tape as well, and I'm like,
I don't love it.
I'm trying to figure out what I'm missing here, like what makes this so sexy. Because I don't like going out that far with those things.
Maybe it's against some bonds or something like that, and they just need protection in case things go absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's obviously against something else. Just on the surface of it, just the part we can see. Obviously, not my favorite way to go. I like a good ratio vertical to the upside in VIX listeners, just probably not those strikes and probably not that far out in SEP land. Let's see how far out we can go in SVIX. It continues to regain some of its mojo. So Mr. Rhodes will now be regretting having unloaded all of his at about a 27.20 right now. That puts it up a little over almost 1.5 points from where it was this time last week. In terms of paper, there's a whole lot of nothing going up in SVIX today. Only 650 contracts on the tape, even though the ADV is managing to tick up, which is interesting given where we are seasonally right now. The ADV is about 2,400 contracts a day. That's up 300 on the week, so something must have traded during the week, but nothing going up today. Let's do a quick top 3 out here in SVIX. The big position out there right now, 2,300 of the SEP 10 puts. We talked about these before. I think a lot of people would probably sell these, given the chance. They would pick up some SVIX around a 10, barring your Volmageddon event. That's an interesting level for it. Number 2, 2,200 of the SEP 35s. We joked about these, and these have not quite come to fruition, but pretty darn close. They're still open, which makes me a little bit more sad for this person because they had a good pop on these. They could have probably made some money on these bad boys. Again, SEP's not done. We could threaten that 35 strike again. If Meatball's puts come to play, then we might be threatening that 35 strike in SVIX. And then the number 3 spot, 1,300 of the SEP 27 calls. And let's go out to its sister product while we're at it. Let's go out to UVIX at about a 410 when we kicked off the show. It puts it down about 0.5 point. This time last week, UVIX was lighting it up. There were like 32,000 contracts trading already. I don't know. It was just crazy paper all of a sudden going up in UVIX. Not quite the case today. Only 7,200 today. That's still decent. The ADV is 14,000, so we're exactly halfway to the ADV. That ADV has ticked up about 2,000. So I think last Friday, a bit of an aberration out there in terms of paper. Everyone's waiting for this thing, obviously, to reverse split. Not so much right now. All the big positions out there. The SEP expiring on the 8th, 4 half calls, 9,000 of those. Then 4,000 for number 2 of the AUG 4s expiring today. So they probably should have got out of Dodge on those earlier, but we shall see. And then number 3, 3,500 of the AUG 4 puts also expiring today. So those they're probably biting their fingernails all the way to the close on those. Mr. Rhodes, what are your thoughts on your favorite, maybe less favorite now because you don't hold as much of it as you used to, SVIX, and then its somewhat muted sibling UVIX?
I've got we've talked about how it's my favorite ETF and all that kind of stuff. I'm long it, but I'm long it at a it's the smallest position I've had in a little while. And if we get a move up to 30 or so, I probably sell some calls against SVIX. I feel okay owning it because of the structure of because of what the term structure looks like right now. So I feel like I have a little bit of a buffer, even if volatility goes up a bit. We talked about my Bloomy. Bloomberg actually has something they put out every day that's the daily inflows and outflows for the VIX ETPs. And the long ones have been losing they've been experiencing outflows up for the last 3 or 4 days. The short funds, basically, the flows have been punched. So people are sticking with their short position. I think maybe that's showing up in the option activity that we're talking about as well. But people have been reducing their exposure to the long VIX related ETFs.
Did you just call your Bloomberg my Bloomy? You thought I let that slide?
It's my baby.
I guess when you have something like that, you got to pay it off.
I have this thing on all night next to my bed.
It's your
roll
nightlight.
over. It's
Your wife wakes up, she sees you hugging the Bloomberg at night again. Yeah, I could see you loving up your Bloomy over there.
My Bloomy. So yeah, but it's kind of interesting to I get a little news alert every day that shows what the flows look like for the long funds and the short funds. Just kind of interesting. That's all.
Mr. Meatball.
But it's just interesting to see the flows match up with what we're seeing in the option activity as well.
Mr. Meatball, any thoughts out there on SVIX, which I know you like the underlying a little bit more than the options, or UVIX, which is kind of spinning its wheels right now?
Yeah, UVIX needs to reverse split so that it becomes more interesting to trade. SVIX, I really like the overwrite position here. Russell, you'll like this play. You can buy SVIX for like $27.30, go out to Jan 2024, sell the 30 call at $3.70, something like that. That's a pretty nice overwrite position. And gives you, a little decent amount of leeway on the downside too.
Yeah, one of my former bosses at SEBO would scream up and down about never using call options as a hedge, but then at the same time we're talking about putting on a put spread which gives you some which will guard against some losses but not all losses. I've been doing work on for one of the Asian exchanges, and I consistently see people selling call options that are obviously a partial hedge because they're a bit in the money whenever they get certain spikes. And I've always felt like you can think about calls for income. But if you start to take a look at a call that has a premium, and the premium you're talking about right there, that's more than 10% down. That's guarding against more than 10% downside if you decide to sell those. And I do think that's another way to be thinking about that. And I like that you said, I can't remember the wording that you used, but basically that it covers some downside for you as well. So yes, I do like that trade. I haven't been looking that far out in the options. I'm always looking at the front month, and maybe I should be looking farther out.
Yeah, there's some nice juice in those farther out options.
Get your Jan juice there, Mr. Rhodes, as we keep on rolling. Let's see what juice we can find in UVXY. It continues to move to the dark side again, listeners. 17 3/4 right now, down about 1 3/4 points from where it was this time last week. A respectable paper on the tape today in UVIX, 113,000 contracts on the tape out there today. The ADV is 142, up about 13,000. So somehow UVXY is managing to gain ADV in the dog days of summer. So an impressive feat. The top positions out there in UVXY, again, this is all pre-split adjusted, so we'll just skip over those because they're nonsense strikes like the 8s, listeners. But let's go out to what's going up today, because it looks like some paper is going up today. It looks like the big dog out there today, we have 12,000 of... Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Here we go. 8,000 of the AUG 19 calls expiring today, so... interesting. Hopefully they overwrote the heck out of those and they're taking them off right now. Right behind it, we have 8,000 as well of the 18 half calls also expiring today. So maybe a little bit of a vertical going up out there. And then we have 7,500 of the AUG 18 puts. So not surprising. A lot of it centered around the at-the-money strike on expiration day, which it usually is in a lot of these ETPs. But a fair amount of paper out there in UVXY. So if it can keep some of its upside value, maybe next time if they can reverse split it to an actually reasonable number, then we might see some decent options paper out there again. Speaking of decent options paper, VXX used to be the big dog. I mean, it used to sometimes beat VIX. Go back to some of the, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago on this show, you go back to that time frame and you could see many weeks when VXX was trumping VIX. VXX would be at a 450 on a day like today when VIX is at 230 or something like that. We used to call those tail wagging the dog days. We haven't seen those in quite some time, and certainly not for the better part of the last year once Barclays lost its mind out there. VXX 24.5 right now, down about 1.5 points. Today, again, looking pretty respectable out there. 82,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV is only 84,000. That's down 4,000. So unless it shuts down right now, probably going to hit that probably in the next few minutes. Let's do some top three out here because those are the only split adjusted. Actually, no, there's more non-split adjusted ones out here. Let's just do a top three in VXX right now as well because we're coming up against it here. Number 3, 12,000 of the SEP 23 puts. Number 2, 22,000 of the SEP 20 puts. And the big size open position in VXX options right now, listeners, 23,000 of the SEP 22 puts. So again, folks like themselves some out of the money puts. We know that. That's how VXX tends to trade. Those puts looking a little bit less out of the money now than they did last week. We'll see how those come to pass. In terms of what's lighting it up out there today, again, it's a pretty active day. The big dog out there today, 12,000 of the AUG 25 half. So these are a point out of the money. So for their sake, I hope they blasted the hell out of these maybe 6,000 times, and now they bought them back, and they're happy campers, all 12,000. Number 2, 8,400 of the AUG 25 puts. So once again, looking right into the fire on expiration day. And bringing up the rear, number 3, 8,300 of the AUG 24 half puts. So, folks, I mean, everyone talks about 0 day in the SPX and everything, but folks for a long time and all these vol ETPs have loved to just dive right into the fire on expiration day, and they've been doing it for years. So, not exactly a new phenomenon. It's just really exploded in popularity and in more products, obviously, like the SPX. But intriguing stuff. Nonetheless, Mr. Meatball, I know you've been slinging a lot of VXX as well out there lately. Have you also looked at UVXY, given the fact that it got a little bit more robust again? And also, what do you got up your sleeve in your new favorite products, sir, VXX?
Yeah, I actually just executed a trade in VXX while you were going through stuff. I'm using VXX to hedge off some short positions. It's got some nice juice to it. It's had a nice little pop here with the market falling apart. And yeah, UVXY is still very active. And you're kind of forced to use that until UVIX reverse splits because there's, it's the only levered one that is going to have any juice to it.
Mr. Rhodes, same question for you, sir. Anything catching your eye out there in VXX or UVXY this week?
Well, I'm looking at the trading versus the volume today versus the open interest for the options that go off the board in 2 hours and 8 minutes. And the volume for the 25.5 calls that expire today is 6 times the open interest.
They're not messing around.
Which is the kind of volume that you see. If you do the same thing for SPX each day, you'll see volume for the expiring options multiples of the open interest because everybody's trading on that last day. Does this mean that we need dailies on VXX?
Oh, no.
At least expiration day daily, because people love it on the last day of the cycle. They just go crazy for it.
Mark Sebastian, are you happy I'm not in a position to recommend that to people?
Yes, I am. It'd be fun. Andrew actually bought some of the 25 puts expiring today for 25 cents, and he's happy.
He's very happy.
He's getting into that game, the expiration day, rolling the dice game that everybody seems to love out there these days. Well, yeah, especially in VXX, UVXY, these products that love to give up the ghost going into the close there. They certainly can work out pretty well. Let's get into some of our questions of the week as well. Let's see how those are working out. A little bit of the old volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
Let's get to the Vol voicemail here. Let's look at the chat really quickly here. You folks are going hot and heavy today. A lot of private chats about jobs numbers. We won't get into those on the show. We'll leave you guys to your private discussions. A lot of people also talking about buying your puts, Mr. Meatball, the VIX 13.5 and 15 puts in September. So I knew we were going to lure them to the dark side. While you were talking, I did throw some bids in for some of those. I'll let you know, just to have some fun content for the show here. So I'll let you know by the end of the show. I'm the proud owner. All right, well, either the 15s or the 13s.
Let's go. I'm long a lot of them. So.
Let's go, baby.
Let's go.
Indeed. I'm sure the chat, as is their wants, will own a boatload pretty soon. Let's go on out to our question of the week right now. And there we go. Way ahead of me. Look at our producer. Keen-minded producer that you are. Our question of the week right now is, we've asked this question a few times during the year, beginning of the year. Last time we asked it was back in May. And last time we asked it, cash was king for all of you. So we thought we'd revisit it right now, given what's going on in the market. Quite simply, in these troubled times, where are you allocating the majority of your portfolio? We kept it simple. Everyone's asking, what about vol, income, risk premium, harvesting, all these things? None of those more nuanced strategies. Kept it very simple. Your standard buckets, cash, fixed income, equities, or commodity/crypto. Mr. Rhodes, what are you voting for? I got a feeling I know what you're voting for. And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for in these troubled times, sir?
I'm voting for cash because it's just as good as money.
Exactly. It's amazing how you can exchange it for money all the time. Isn't that cool?
I know.
It's so fungible with cash itself, you know? Yes. You think the audience is going that way too?
No.
All right, what do you think the audience is up to?
Audience might be commodities, thinking about a second move in inflation.
Interesting. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What are you voting for, and what do you think our audience is voting for?
Yeah, where does the bond? Is there a section for bonds? I forget.
There is fixed income. There is a section for fixed income. Yes,
I like fixed income here. I think munis are starting to look really interesting, and the audience is. I'm going to disagree with Russell. I think they're all about the cash.
And you know what? It's been back and forth, cash to equities. When we did it on the option block yesterday, they were exactly tied. Then equities kind of started to run away with it, and now they are exactly tied again. 35.7% each for cash and for equities. So our audience cannot make up its mind right now. We have about 2 hours left. So if you're listening to the podcast, listeners, you're out of luck there. If you're listening live, you can still sway the numbers over there at options is the place to go. Fixed income coming in, I guess, second at 19% with two tied for one there. And then commodities, crypto bringing up the rear, only 9.5% out there. So no love for commodities or crypto right now, which is kind of interesting. Mr. Meatball, the important question. During our show last week, we did that flash poll about our audience's favorite lightsaber color. You were there for the violet, sir, I believe. Our audience went 2/3 to the green. So our audience not picking my favorite. I voted for red. So I don't know. Does that break your heart, sir? No love for violet/other?
I'm not surprised. Everyone loves Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber. So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to mess with easier to say, Luke Skywalker and Yoda. So I guess a little bit of love for green. As we keep on rolling, let's see if the vol markets have love for us. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everyone, welcome to the crystal ball. And you know what? VIX was at about a 16.15 when we kicked off the show, and I expected a little bit of evolution during the show, but it's almost exactly at a 16.50 when we're ending the show here as well. So last week it was myself and the Meatball, and we were feeling pretty good about our levels. And then we were feeling higher. I was feeling 1845. Mr. Meatball's at a 1991. And then options queen at an 1820. We have a bunch of other ones in here our producers have gone through. They did pump up this one, Z2313, who I do believe is in our chat today. He was at a 1610. Wow. Uh-oh, options queen. He may be coming for your throne. He said if NVIDIA does fine and rates stabilize next week, I think VIX will be lower. Just my opinion. And you know what? You were one of the few who was buying a lower VIX. Everyone else was going to the upside. So I doff my cap to you, sir and or madam. Our producers will reach out to you. You are the winner chicken dinner of fabulous prizes for this week. Wow, well done out there. 1610. That's a pretty much exact bullseye. So a long way around to saying no winners on the panel last week. So we let our guests go first in those scenarios. Mr. Meatball, I should say, Mr. Rhodes, what are you feeling for this time next? What's Bloomy telling you?
What's the Bloomy tell me? Well, Bloomy tells me where it is right now, but it does not give me a crystal ball.
No, hit the crystal ball button. It's right there in the top right. You have to flip the switch to get it.
There it is. Yeah, it's saying 1720.
Wow, interesting. See that number? You hit it, it comes right up. It's amazing how fast
it does. So when I'm way off, I'm blaming the machine, and then asking for a refund.
Got to blame good old Bloomy. Mr. Meatball, I'll let you choose. You want to go next or last?
I'll go. I'm gonna say, I'm going to say 1551.
Are you talking up your puts, sir?
Well, then I would go 1441 or 1331.
If I get filled on those puts by the end of the day, I'll be right with you. I'll be 13 half. 1551 for the Meatball. This is a weird week. I'm usually have a sense coming into the end of the show of where I'm feeling for this time next week. This week, I'm kind of adrift. I'm not really feeling what I'm going to put down here, listeners. So I said we're at about a 16-15 or so right now coming into the end of the show. My cohorts here are kind of all over the place. I could see an argument for a gentle drift down in vol, but also I could see an argument for drifting down in markets and vol, not quite popping, but maintaining firm, maybe getting a little bit frothier. So you know what? Along those lines, I'm going to say this time next week, 1645. Look at that, right in the middle of those two, actually. That's strange how these things work out. So that's your market, listeners. 1551 to the dark side, 1645 for me, Goldilocks in the middle. And Russell, once again, back to his upside ways, bringing it home at 1720. All right, that is going to do it for Vol Views. Also going to do it for our broadcast week for all of our on-demand listeners. Thanks for joining us. For all you pro folks, hang out. I'll be back in a little bit to break down the crazy week that was from an options oddities perspective. Man, a lot of fun trades to get into on there. Congratulations again to, who was it? Z2313. That was a bull. That was very impressive. So we got to call it out when it happens. See, listeners, you play the game, you win fabulous prizes. Get your predictions in for next week before the end of the day today, so you too can play along with all that fun. And Mr. Rhodes, before you hop on the plane, if folks want to check out all your vol analysis and maybe put your Bloomy to a little bit of work, where should they go? What should they do?
I got a Substack, Russell Rhodes, my full name, .substack.com, and then anything I ever do shows up on the Twitter, my full name, Russell Rhodes.
And if they send you some calculation works, you can just send them your rates to amortize your Bloomberg, right? And there we go.
Anything from the Bloomberg, it's $5 to my Venmo.
There we go. Help him pay off the Bloomberg. One trade, one calculation at a time, listeners. Give him a follow on the old Twitters at Russell Rhoads, 2 S's, 2 L's, RHOADS, all one word over there if you want some vol goodness in between episodes. And Mr. Meatball, speaking of vol goodness, where should they go if they want some vol goodness in their lives, sir?
Yeah, come read my blog every day, The Trader's Edge at optionpit.com. You're gonna like it.
You are going to like it indeed. Like I said, unfortunately, that's going to do it for us here on the old Vol Views. Also going to do it for the on-demand network. Hope you guys and gals had a great trading week. You're staying safe. You're staying sane. Staying profitable. Or at the very least, staying on the sidelines and plotting your next move on when to get back in. Have a great, fun week. We'll see you back here on Monday for the option block. All the way through to Friday, another episode of Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.